Welcome to the LIMB-itless podcast. The LIMB-itless podcast is centered around exactly that, being limitless. Hunting, fishing, fitness, nutrition, adventure, disabilities. What may be covered during the LIMB-itless podcast will be, well, limitless. Stay tuned for this episode of the LIMB-itless podcast. All right, Limitless fans, we are here in sunny eastern shore of Maryland. When I say sunny, we are now in the 90s, and the temperature is matching the amount of humidity right now, and it's just absolutely disgusting. But I tell you what's not disgusting, and that is two things. One is the guest that we have on the show today, and I'm not going to let the name out right now. If you're on YouTube, you're seeing his beautiful bearded face. But the other thing that we get to talk about is the sponsors that we have on the Limitless podcast that are here for your benefit. And we're going to run down those sponsors with the discount codes today. Hunting Day Coffee. That is a 10% discount on any order. The code is BLimitless10. Phelps Game Calls. That's a 20% discount on one order, not one item, one order. And our guest is holding up a Phelps bugle tube. We might talk about Phelps today. That is BLimitless20. Again, that's a one-time use code at the moment. It's for your entire order. Spend that code smartly. Next is On Point Adventure Foods. These are all my favorites, but holy cow, I love good food, and I love On Point Adventure Foods. 10% discount on any order, BLimitless10. Vortex Optics. This is the big one, 25% off. The key is Vortex does not deal with you directly as a consumer. So your discount code that I'm about to give you is through eurooptics.com. I've had great success ordering product through them, zero issues at all. This code is VTXLMTLS25. That is a 25% discount on any Vortex product on eurooptics.com. Now I have the Love Sauce. If you like hot sauce, and Harry hates it when I say this, but if you like hot sauce, the Love Sauce is a boutique small batch hot sauce. This is a 10% off of any order $12 or more. It's BLimitless10. I'm telling you, the Love Sauce is some really, really good sauces. And then Wilderness Athlete. And this sponsor is going to go hand in hand with our topic for today. But the Wilderness Athlete, BLimitless20 for a 20% discount off of any Wilderness Athlete product on their website. So huge thanks to the show sponsors. Again, if you use those codes, I encourage you to do so. Does not benefit me or the Limitless podcast in any way, shape, or form. Those are purely for you as a listener. So with that said, today we are going to have a solid chat with Brian Austin out of Wisconsin. He is the founder and owner of the Beast Mode Archery Challenge and Games. Brian, welcome to the Limitless podcast.
Well, thanks, Aaron. I appreciate your time and the invite onto your podcast, and I appreciate the listeners and their time listening to this. And hopefully, we can talk about something useful that they might might be able to take in the field, or who knows, whatever. But no, I appreciate your time. And after listening to some of the your sponsors, I'm gonna have to check them out. I wrote some of those down. The coffee sounds good. I'm drinking my coffee right here. I might have to try out that coffee and some of those meals for this fall's elk hunt. So eager to look into those.
Well, we can chat about those at some point during this episode if you want to, Brian. But I think we're going to have a really good chat, and this is going to have an impact on any hunter. This isn't just, you and I share a passion for the backcountry and chasing big game nationwide. And I love the foundation of what you do, incorporating functional fitness training for big hunts, and then just exploring and challenging yourself personally. Um, for the listeners, Brian and I met 2 years ago on a ski slope in Wisconsin, and I had an idea of what I was getting into, and Brian had an absolute idea what everybody that was participating was getting into, and I have to say that what Brian is going to share with you here in a minute is taking your desire to enjoy to experience a wilderness off of your back, to get out and pursue big game off trail and to push your personal limits. The Beast Mode Archery Challenge is an incredible place to go do that. And you're kind of taking, let's take a Spartan race and mix it with a total archery challenge. And that's exactly what Brian is offering the archer. So, Brian, why don't you give us a little background about what you have going on with the Beast Mode, and maybe when and why and how it started?
Sure. So, growing up in Wisconsin here, and I was born into a hunting family. So, hunting is not just a hobby and a passion, it's just a way of life. So, I've been bow hunting the majority of my life on and off. There's been years where, through high school, college, stuff like that, where you just kind of priorities, change and stuff. But so I've been a bow hunter all my life. And then I got into fitness, being an athlete in high school and through college and stuff. And then I've been in the fitness industry now for 23 years. I've been doing fitness training, personal training, coaching, and all different types of avenues when it comes to uh, being healthy, getting in shape, human performance, working with individuals as young as 9, 10 years of age to in their 90s, working with the stay-at-home mom to the state, champion athlete in different sports, and even some junior Olympians as well too. So I kind of have a very broad background when it comes to fitness, being healthy, but then also uh, combining that with hunting, specifically bow hunting, especially in the last 8 to 9 years of really combining those together. Because there's a group of people that I really like to work with, and that's bow hunters. Because most bow hunters are, uh, it's more than just dedication, right? It's more than motivation. It is a way of life. It is uh, just being focused on the end goal. And that's something that bow hunters, I think, just have. Rather, if we're born with it, or if it's just something that the sport itself kind of engraves in us. So it's just a cool group of people to work with. So this is what is this? The 5th year or the 6th year of doing the Beast Mode Archery Challenge events. Uh, Kind of our tagline is born out of the passion for archery, fitness, and bow hunting. So it's kind of all those brought together. We have several different events. It's kind of like what you said, kind of like attack combined with, a tough mutter, or I forget what the other one that you said was.
Spartan race.
Yeah, Spartan race. And that's, to be honest with you, that's kind of how they did come about. I used to do endurance mountain bike events, 12 and 24-hour races. And that's specifically how this event where we met, the one that you participated in, the Beast Mode Endurance Archery Challenge, how that came about is some of these events I have participated in the past, but then also being a backcountry hunter and elk hunter, of trying to come up with an event that really simulates what we encounter on a week-long 10-day hunt. This past year's event, I had a lot of people that came up to me and said, this event was harder than a 10-day hunt. Well, yes, it's because it's in 8 hours. I try to jam pack all the mental and physical emotions that you're going to feel in a 10-day hunt into 8 hours, right? So we try to really jam pack that event. But yeah, that's basically how the events came about. The first event that we ever did was the BMAT Games, which is a 4-stage event. We can talk about that more in depth as we go along here. But that was the very first event that we did. Actually, I should step back. The very first event that we did was the indoor Beast Mode games or Beast Mode challenge at Vortex Optics. So they started out as a winter event, and then during COVID, I started doing outdoor events. So we do the BMAC games, the endurance challenge. We have the Quiver Shiver now, which is we've done that the past 2 years, which is in the dead of winter here in Wisconsin in January. And just so you know, for the record, it's in the 90s here as well with the heat index. So we have the hot, humid weather
No kidding.
that you guys are experiencing. It's just gross. But so we have those events, but then we also have our big 3D events, the King of the Hill 3D and the King of the Mountain 3D, and maybe next year we might be adding a third one. So we have a lot of different events that basically, no matter what type of bow hunter or archer you are, we have an event for you. If you just like to shoot 3D, then check out one of our King of the Hill, King of the Mountain events. If you are crazy like we are and you like to run around and do crazy stuff and test yourself and prepare yourself and be ready for your fall hunt, whatever that might be, if it's a Midwest whitetail hunt, if it's a backcountry elk hunt or mule, whatever it is, we have events that are going to help prepare you for that hunt. And really, that's the number one reason, one of the number one reasons for these events is to get people prepared for their hunt so that they can enjoy it. Because we all know that we have limited time each fall, so we need to maximize that time. And as we get older, we become aware that we have only limited falls ahead of us. That Lord only knows how many that we might have, so we want to take advantage of each and every one of those. So I know folks that are all under their 60s that are still doing this, and that's my goal, is to be able to do this for as long as I can.
So your 8-hour challenge that impacted my life in a way that I didn't foresee at the time. So talk about your 8-hour challenge, so that people know what we're talking about before I start sharing a portion of not necessarily
Sure.
a portion of my experience, but how that impacted my life where I'm at right now.
You bet. So the 8-hour challenge, it's at Tyrol Basin Ski Resort here in Wisconsin. And we don't have the mountains, but we have the incline, the steepness, like what you'll encounter in the mountains. So last year, the year that you did it, I believe the lap was around 1.5 miles long. This year is a tish longer, is about 1.8 miles long. Roughly 400 to 600 feet of elevation gain and loss during that lap. The objective is to do as many laps as you can in the 8 hours. And there's 2 targets on each lap that you have to shoot. And we do things differently with the targets. So for this event, specifically for the endurance event, if you shoot a heart or a lung, we consider that a kill shot. It's a successful shot. You get to continue on. If you shot a body or a miss, well, you're going to have to spend time looking for your arrow. You might have to spend time tracking that animal. It takes time. So there's a penalty for those bad shots. In this past 2 years, the penalty has been an extra hill climb for one. And then the other target is a sled drag, roughly 100-pound sled drag. And this year's event was a little bit harder than the first year. I didn't want to scare people away the first year. So, but this year's event, the sled was a bit heavier, and the hill climb was a bit steeper and longer. So, and unfortunately, we had warm temps this year. It was in the 80s the last Saturday of April here. It was perfect weather, and then the day of the event it was hot, and then the next day it was in the 60s. So it just you just deal with the deck that you're given there. But yeah, so that's the objective, is to do as many laps as you can, keep grinding it out. You can take breaks whenever you need to take a break. And I encourage people to use the gear that you're going to be hunting with, the boots, the clothing, all that kind of good stuff, so that it's a great way to prepare yourself and to test yourself. And really the main reason why we have that event in April is because typically the weather and the conditions, the environmental conditions, are similar to what you're going to experience in the fall. April here is a lot like fall, and well, as we all know, it can be 80 degrees in September on a backcountry hunt. So that's just what we deal with. But yeah, so the food, I encourage people to use the food, the nutrition, the gear, everything that you're going to be using on a fall hunt. Because again, that's one of the main reasons for these events is for people to have an event that you can actually shoot your bow and arrow and use the gear that you're going to be using on a hunt. Folks had to carry 20 to 25 pound pack, depending on men and women, during that 8 hours. And then you can also participate as a team. If you and your hunting buddies want to do it as a team, you participate as a team. You go through each lap as a team. So there's pros and cons to that. It's a good way to make sure that you and your hunting buddies are on the same page. Because after 5-6 hours, people fatigue at different rates. People go through different psychological thoughts at different rates, and you have to complete it as a team. I mean, you start as a team, you complete as a team. This year, I changed up the team regulations a little bit. That if a team member had to back out for whatever reason, let's say they got a cramp, whatever it is, they could not continue on. They left the team, and the team had to finish, but they have to pick up that person's weight. So you still, if you start with a 4-person team, the teams are 100 pounds, divided however you want. So if some folks divided it where they were changing the weight, if somebody was starting to cramp up or have a hard time, well, then the team took their weight. So there's a little give and take with that. Let's see, what details am I missing here, bud? I'm trying to think. That's kind of the gist of it. Whoever comes out with the most laps in that 8 hours is the winner.
There was a scale station. So the start of the event. So I don't know if you did this year 2, but year 1, the start of the race or your pole position was determined by taking a shot on a standing bear, and I want to say it was probably 30 yards or so.
Yeah.
And that's how you were put into your corral to start the race. That was very unique. There is a scale station, so before you stepped off the line for your first lap, you had your pack weighed, and then randomly throughout the course, anytime you came around and finished a lap, you had to pass by the scale, and you weren't weighed every single time. It was very random, and so that kept people honest, and people weren't calculating water weight in their bladder or their Nalgene's for their total pack weight. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it as well. The end, as far as the laps go, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but it had a cutoff for time. But if you could start a lap before that time cutoff ended, you were able to finish that lap. Correct?
Yes. So yeah, you are correct with that. So when I say within 8 hours, so technically, so this year I made it a little bit more because there was some fuzzy areas there. So this year, it is an 8-hour event, but if you finish before the 8 hours, I told the competitors, if you finish before the 8 hours, you technically have a DNF behind your name because you have to go at least 8 hours, right? So what folks were doing then is that you could wait at the finish line before the finish line. Let's say it's 7 hours and 35 minutes, and it's taken people, as the day went on, it was taking people roughly 45 minutes to an hour to do a lap. The fastest lap at one point was 25 to 30 minutes. But as the day goes on, it was taking 45 minutes to an hour. So if you're coming in and you have, it's 7 hours and 40 minutes, whatever it is, and you were like, oh, man, I'm done. I do not want to go out and do another hour-long lap. So you had to wait before the finish line. And then once the 8 hours strikes, then you can walk through and technically have your finish time at that time. But the folks that were being competitive it was a pretty close, when you consider it's an 8-hour event and the difference between first and second was only 20 some minutes. That's a pretty close finish when you're talking about an event that long. So the top guys, and even not even some of the top guys, just some of the guys that want to push themselves, they were pushing to get in before 8 hours because they wanted to go out and do another lap and get as many laps as they could. So as long as you finished after the 8 hour time frame, that's was your time and the amount of laps that you did. And I want to touch on, we did do the way that we started is unique. So the first year was a surprise. You didn't know that you were going to be shooting that first arrow ahead of time to determine if you shot a heart, you got to try and think if you shot a heart or a lung, I can't remember, you got like a 5 minute bonus. So you got to start the event before the actual start of the event. So you
Right.
got like a 5 minute head start, right? And although some guys were this year like, well, how's that a head start? We have an extra 5 minutes we have to be on the course. But so you got a head start. If you shot, I believe, a lung, uh, you got to start at the time of the event, like the official start. But if you shot poorly, if you shot a body or a miss, you got a 5 minute penalty. You had to wait 5 minutes after the official start. So you're already starting behind. So we did that. We did that this year, but it wasn't a surprise because I'm like, well, it's not going to be a surprise because the people that are coming back from year one are going to know that we're going to do that. So, but there was another surprise, and this is what's awesome about these events because I can dream up of some crazy stuff. So I told the folks, I emailed everybody beforehand. It's like, there's going to be surprises along the event, right? So this year, I waited about 3 to 4 hours into the event. And I always give people a list of gear that they should have, right? You should have good boots. You should have probably trekking poles, water, all that stuff. And I included optics, rangefinder binoculars, because the targets, well, as you know from year one, the targets never moved. Everybody's like, you're moving the targets. I'm like, the targets are not moving. The cone is moving. The distance that you're shooting from is moving. So people caught onto that. So people always had their rangefinder because every hour to 2 hours, I would have the judges at the targets moving the distance of the cone. So you might start out at 27 yards, and the next time you shoot it, it might be 33 yards, whatever it is. So people were carrying their rangefinders, but they were dropping their binoculars. And wouldn't you know, I had about 4 hours into it, about halfway into it, I was at the top of Dick Dragger. Dick Dragger, do you remember what Dick Dragger is? That steep
Yeah.
hill that you had to come
Yep.
up? Yeah.
Yep.
So at the top of that hill, I'm sitting there with my scale and a challenge. So I'm weighing people's packs, and I have a playing card, a deck of cards. I have a playing card that's about, I forget what it was like 30 some yards away, far enough away that you could not see it. You could see it with your naked eye, but you couldn't make out what it is. So they had to write down on a piece of paper because we can't just have people blurting it out as people are funneling through. So they had to write it down on a piece of paper. If they got it right, they got to move on. If they got it wrong, they had to walk down the double black diamond slope and come back up Dick Dragger. And my goodness gracious, the people that had to do that, I thought I was going to get a trekking pole through the heart from a few people that
That's
failed the challenge. So uh, the folks that had their optics, no problem at all. The folks that had their rangefinder, they had to sit there and study that card for a long while to make sure that they got it right. And then some folks didn't have either, and they were doing the penalty because there's no way that they could come up with it. And the card that I chose was the Joker, so that was I got a kick out of it. So that was a surprise. So, anyways, long story short, I try to throw in surprises and different challenges, just like when you're out in the wilderness on an elk hunt. You never know what might get thrown at you. You never know what you might encounter, what you have to overcome. So I have a lot of ideas for next year. I did have a couple more challenges or surprises this year, but because it was so hot and it was sunny and hot, and people were struggling this year. I mean, it was with it being a longer course, a more challenging course, more elevation gain and loss, and then with it being just abnormally hot that day, I took it somewhat easy on him. I only had one surprise for him this year, but next year, watch out.
I just scribbled down a note when we're finished recording I have a idea for you for a.
Ooh, the Aaron Ritter idea. People are gonna love that.
And I actually I mean you there's a couple of things. The wheels are spinning.
Right.
Wheels are spinning. Anyhow, well, that's what happened for me on that mountain, Brian, is I'm a backcountry guy. I have been for a long time. I absolutely love it. It's my passion. Um I was born and raised in Washington State. I've done a fair share of what people call Western hunting. And now that the Navy brought me out to the East Coast and I'm retired out here now, it's time consuming and expensive to get out west. And I refuse to be pigeonholed to have that backcountry experience consuming all of my vacation time and a fair amount of income to get out there to do it.
Yep.
So I've started backcountry hunting the Appalachians, and we can talk about how I do that and the way you can utilize um, public land in the Appalachians and terrain features to give you that feel and to get you away from the common hunter. But when I was at your event 2 years ago, I had not really embarked on that path of exploring and exploiting the Appalachians for my desires. But I met Alex Schaefer and Corey Lease on the side of the mountain there, and they have a dream of going backcountry. And when we were sitting on the mountain and they were watching me with envious eyes sip on my fireball while I was waiting to while I was timing things so that I would finish at that 8 hour mark and not have to punish myself with another lap.
Mhm.
I was talking to them about their plans and whether or not they'd ever executed even a backpacking trip. And the answer was no. And so I started chatting with them about, don't wait until you're going on that expensive, time-consuming elk hunt to be under pack load in the wilderness for the first time. In my opinion, that's that's almost as bad as a new soldier or sailor going into combat having never fired their weapon, or a firefighter having never tried and tested a new particular piece of gear before having to use it on a call. That's a terrible time to do that. You're imparting so many negative scenarios into your hunt if the first time you put on your pack and all of your gear and step off of the trail to go fill especially a highly coveted and expensive elk tag. It's a bad plan. So if nothing else, load up your stuff, spend several hours walking around your neighborhood, and then go pitch your stuff in your backyard so that you know what it feels like, you know what your body's going to feel like, and then you sleep outside for the night. At the bare minimum, do that. And I told them that because they're like, oh yeah, we wear our stuff, in the driveway, and we've done a lap or whatever in the neighborhood. I'm like, so go do that, and spend the day doing that, and then go pitch your tents, your shelters in the backyard, or just go on a backpacking trip. If nothing else, you can put your bow on your back with field points. You can stump shoot if you want to, and go on a backpacking trip and stay the night and come home. But at least you're exercising your gear. You know how your water filters work. You know how your water bladders or your Nalgene's going to work. You know how to load a pack. You know how to unload your pack or access your gear. You know how to pitch your shelter. Do it in the dark. Do it in the rain. Because when you go hunt, all of those things are going to happen. And we talked about all that on the mountain. And when I left your 8 hour challenge, it planted a seed with me of I don't go backcountry enough anymore, because at that point in time, all of it was out west. All of my experience was out west. I had backpacked the Appalachians previously, but I had never put it all together. And so that's what I was thinking to myself, what am I preaching to people? And what am I doing to put validity to that preaching? So when I returned to the East Coast from your event, I started planning and executing backcountry hunts in the Appalachians. And it's revolutionized my hunting, because now I not only go out west and backcountry hunt for elk, I backcountry hunt whitetail deer and turkeys in the Appalachians, and I'm having an absolute blast doing it. And I fill more tags backcountry hunting the Appalachians than I do going out west and spending all that time and money to fill an elk tag. So I'm just having a ball doing it. And part of that, that light bulb went off at your event up on the ski slopes.
Wow, that dude, that's awesome. I love to hear stories and testimonies like that, because that again, it validates why I'm doing what I'm doing. You know, that these events, it sparks that light bulb. It introduces people. You know, I know of several groups that now hunt together that met at these events. And that is, again, it just validates the purpose of doing these events, bringing like-minded folks together that have a passion for the outdoors, for bow hunting, for archery, and all that stuff. And dude, I think you're really onto something there, because that is, I know a lot of guys and gals that are, you know, haven't even gone elk hunting, but yet they have all the gear and they're waiting for this coveted tag. You know, they're earning points, and shortly we won't be able to just go to Colorado at, you know, at a last minute. You know, this year is going to be the last year that we'll be able to do that. But get out there, take advantage of the time, because we don't know, like for example, for Colorado, when that opportunity will be taken away. And to be able to do that in your own state, you know, you're in the mountains, or you're close to the mountains, so you're lucky in that aspect. Here in Wisconsin, a lot of people don't realize it. I think over almost 49% of our state is public land. We have enormous amount of public land. The northern third of the state is national forest, pretty much. And then we're close to the UP, which is almost all public land. So we have, but people here, we just don't think of it like that.
No,
But to get out there.
that's a common thought across the United States. The commonality in backcountry hunting nationwide is it requires 8,000 feet of elevation and an elk tag. And that you could not be further from the truth.
Yep.
Now, there are some diehard elk hunters out there that will argue that you're not going to experience a true backcountry hunt unless you're out west at elevation hunting elk. I'm not discrediting the time and effort and commitment that it takes to execute a Western backcountry elk hunt. I absolutely love it. But I'll tell you what, Brian, last November, I packed in for a deer hunt. And a lot of people have heard this story. A lot of my listeners have heard this story. Our camp was dry, where we turkey hunted in the spring, where we had ample water in November. Well, October, we found it dry, returned again in November. We had water a mile and a half from camp in October. And when we went in for the November hunt, I told the two guys that I was hunting with, I said, I will not be adding a 3-mile trek to my day or every 2 days to get water. So I'm going to pay the man, and I'm going to pack enough water for 4 days on the way in. My pack was well over 100 pounds because I put all of my water bladders in my meat load on my meat shelf in my pack, and I packed all of my water in with me. It was miserable, absolutely miserable to get in there. But I can tell you what, when I left the truck carrying that load, it was gross. When I hit our pitch site, man, it's a sense of accomplishment. You're like, I just navigated 3 miles to this location with over 100 pounds on my back. Yeah. The next morning I got up, I climbed the mountain, I climbed up in a tree because I saddle hunt in the backcountry, and I harvested a beautiful 7-point whitetail on the side of the mountain. And I spent the rest of the day packing that deer out.
That's awesome.
That sense of accomplishment does not have to be tied to an elk tag. And in actuality, you're going to achieve that sense of accomplishment more often by pursuing turkey or deer in the backcountry, because your chances of success are so much greater.
Right.
Now, the time and effort that it takes to get an elk out, there's no way to replicate that with a deer or a turkey. Hands down, I totally understand that. But everything else about that experience, I can achieve it multiple times a year in the Appalachians and I might only achieve that once every 3 to 5 years with an elk tag. And I wish people would look at that a little bit differently. Wisconsin, you don't have the elevation, but if your state is mainly composed of public land, and if you can find pockets that's roadless or limited access, or has terrain features that limits the amount of foot traffic in there, load your stuff on your back, find the right pitch site, pack into that area, and then hunt that area. You're getting the backcountry experience, and you can do it in a 4-day weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It's a blast.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. That's I'm wired more to enjoy the journey and the experiences than it is. Obviously we want to kill something and put food on the table, right? But for me, it's about that. Whatever kind of hunt it is, just enjoying the efforts and the journey of it is that we all, being hunters, we're all around folks that, will get out the cell phone and start swiping through all the pictures and oh, look at this, this is the 190, this is whatever. I don't, I don't care. I don't care. Tell me about the story. Tell me about, but some people just aren't wired that. In which, whatever, to each their own, right? Whatever gets you in the outdoors. But for me, like you, I think we're probably a lot alike in that aspect that if you wouldn't have killed anything on that hunt, I mean, yeah, you'd be a little disappointed, but it's about being out there and experiencing what the outdoors has to offer. And yeah, so I'm with you. I think more people should do that and being encouraged to do that. And from my experience from working with a lot of folks, it's also and I'm going to say it's the fear of not having gone that far back or hiked that far or whatever it is. Because I can think back to before I elk hunt, before my first elk hunt, man, we're gonna go 6 miles back into the backcountry. Like how, like what do we do if something happens? There's all the unknown questions, right? And I think, not to, bring it a 360 back to the events, but I think as people participate in challenges that truly challenge you, you don't really know what you're capable of doing. Maybe for a whitetail hunt, maybe you're used to going, 400 yards from your truck and being like, that's far enough because it's like, oh, if I kill something, I don't know how I'm going to get back. Or, luckily now we have Onyx or what a mapping system on our phone. So really, your chances of getting truly lost are almost not there unless something happens with your phone and you are truly 10 miles into the backcountry. But I tell you what, it's easier to navigate the mountains in the backcountry than it is the flatlands of Wisconsin because you get into the woods in northern Wisconsin, everything looks the same. There's no topography changes. Like everything truly looks the same unless you're along a creek and you can follow that. When you're in the mountains, you can at least know, all right, I got this peak here, I got this, whatever it is, you can at least see stuff. So to people's, if there's a fear for people to going into the mountains and getting lost, you may not know exactly the pinpoint where you are with it, like on a phone, but you're much less likely to get lost in the mountains, I think, than what you are in the flat land and big woods and flat country.
Uh, and I love your 8 hour challenge just because it gives a person an idea of what their output is going to be. And then you can add your own like other challenges to the event personally or in your team, however you want to. When I was there, I looked at it as I've ran ultras. And for me, fueling for an 8 hour endurance challenge is very different than fueling for a 5K. It's different than fueling for a marathon. You have to look at your hydration and your nutrition sources differently for an 8 hour challenge than you do for a 4 hour challenge. It's just physiologically, it's what you have to do. I showed up in Wisconsin and I had my meal plan for that 8 hour challenge. And I had my meal plan in a paper bag in the hotel room that we were staying in. And when I got up that morning, I grabbed all of my stuff except for that paper bag. And I did not realize it until I had made I think it was my third lap. I had either finished my second and going into the third, or I'd finished my third, and I was ready for my meal break, and I went to the truck because I had my jet boil and everything. That was part of my weight load. I wasn't carrying a sandbag. I just had my gear in my pack. I went to my truck to grab my first meal. Yeah, it wasn't there. So I
But the
my
fireball is there though, huh?
So, well, this is the funny part. Between the stores that I keep in my truck, because if I'm not actually using my jet boil in my pack, it's in the back of my truck. I drive that thing around everywhere because I never know when I'm going to need it.
Right.
So I had a couple of small things in my truck. And like I had a tuna pack and a some things like that. But I had been on a scouting trip. I think it was a scouting trip, or I'd been on a backcountry turkey hunt, one or the other. Um, but in my pack, I had some snacks and some Fireball. That's what I survived on that day. And there were other people there that found out about it. They're like, hey, dude, have a sandwich. Hey, have this, have that, or whatever. I said, no way. I'm like, this is for me, this is realistic training. One thing is it's a military mindset of when you forget gear, you pay the man. The best way to learn not to forget things is suffrage, right? So I was
Yep.
like, no way. If I was in the backcountry and let's say I get back to camp and I hadn't used a bear bag, or a critter had actually accessed my bear bag, stripped all of my stuff, right? If I'd been hunting all day, I come back to the pitch site, my food is gone. I will have left whatever I can scavenge from that mess or whatever's left over in my pack from being out under movement all day, and then potentially just have to pack up and head back to the truck, right? So that's just the way I looked at it. I was like, well, you made a dumb move by forgetting your food for the day. So you're just not going to eat today. Have a good time with that. And that's what I did. I mean, you can add those aspects to the 8 hour challenge. You can make it as hard as you want it to be, or you can only make it as hard as Brian Austin wanted it to be. So many different aspects to it. It was such a good event, and it was very positive. I will say, you can speak to this from your side of the fence, being the guy that's created it and was managing it. Me as a participant, I don't think when I say that I encountered one or two negative people on the course, it was why they were under load, under movement, trying to finish their lap to get back to their team because they were being so competitive. For the most part, even people that were out on the course, they were interactive and they responded to positivity. The folks that were highly motivated and competitive, when you interacted with them down in, we'll call it base camp, where they were transitioning through their team members, once they were there, super positive and laughing and having fun. So when I say that, what I shouldn't even say that it was a negative encounter, just they were so focused, and some of them were miserable. The grind, a buddy of mine likes to use the term the grind. I love it. The harder the grind is, it just makes me smile even more. It's like, okay, I'm laughing. This really, really sucks right now. Can it get any worse?
Right.
Some people don't react the same way. And that's so out on the trail, you got a lot of mixed emotions on the trail, but
Right.
overall, man, it was such a positive event. People loved it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I think in an event like that, consider and also taking into consideration that the majority of the people that are doing that event, it's the first time ever doing something like that. It's the first time pushing themselves beyond a 5K or a 10K or whatever it is. So they have no idea how they're going to mentally respond to the physical challenges that they're under. And you are right. The majority of the people are good people, have a good attitude. You have to, right? Because if you don't, you're not going to last out there. I think sometimes though, people, you are right. The people, and I shouldn't even say the top guys because everybody's competitive, right? And even let's look at Cam. Cam won the event the last 2 years. He has a smile on his face almost every moment I see him out on the laps. He's encouraging people. Like he is a great guy. Then there's people that are further back that are in just misery, in which it's fine because we're all going through it. But that is something that I don't tolerate, and I've told our volunteers these events run on the volunteers that we have. Like it takes a small army to put on these events, and if I ever catch anybody like giving the volunteers a hard time, like that is like I have a very short fuse at that point. Because it's those folks that are truly out there sacrificing their time helping the competitors. So, and just a plug, we are always in search for volunteers. So, if and a lot, the reason why, because a lot of people will volunteer for the event and they're like, this looks awesome. I'm going to do it next year. So we have this constant flow of, and it's a great way that if you are thinking about, man, this event sounds cool, but I just don't know if I'm ready for it. Come volunteer and experience it firsthand from that aspect so you can see. So, anyways, but you are right. Attitude is everything. And that's always been my motto for as long as I can remember, is trying to overcome, even when you are in the shittiest circumstances. It really comes down to the attitude. And we all have a breakdown at some point, right? But it's acknowledging that breakdown and it's overcoming that breakdown and changing. We all have the power to choose how we react. Okay. So it's in that instance of if you do have a breakdown, I said something or I reacted wrong, well, change it, right? Don't stay in that constant, woe is me and pity the fool. You got to overcome that because I tell you what, there's a lot of people watching the competitors. Just kind of getting off on a tangent here. There's in the BMAC games, Hannah, who's on a team with her husband, they won the team division in the BMAC games, I think the last 3 years, 2 or 3 years. And she came the one year and watched her husband compete, but then she saw all these women competing and she's like, I can do that. And those women motivated her to get in shape, to learn how to shoot a bow, to do all that stuff. And then she came and was a participant. So my point is no matter where you're at on the finish line, where you finish, there's people watching you, and that goes to everything, all aspects of life, right? There's always somebody watching, and not necessarily I don't really care what people think of me in most cases, but I at least want to act and respond appropriately. So I don't know how we got off on that tangent, but
I'm still in contact with a couple of volunteers from your course 2 years ago. And I'm friends with people now that were actually participating. So on both sides of that fence, I mean, you and I still remain in contact. You're the founder and organizer of the event. That if you go to the Beast Mode, you're doing more than just paying an entry fee and going to an event and then coming home. You are broadening your whole outdoor circle by going to one of those events. You will benefit at so many levels.
yeah, well, I appreciate those words, and that's the type of environment that I try to portray and try to create. And that I tell folks because I get emails quite often saying, I don't have any friends that bow hunt or into archery, and this is for all of our events, whether it be our King of the Hill event. Can I come and shoot by myself? Is it okay if I sign up by myself? Yes, it is. I mean, that's participate by yourself if that's what you want, or you know what, you're likely to find a group of guys that you can shoot with, or it's man, a lot. There's the stigma that these events are full of muscle bound, uh, you know, big ego group of people, and we're not. We have some very fit, very athletic individuals that participate in our events, but typically they're some of the nicest people that you'll meet there. But it goes to say for everybody that's at our events, most of them are very good people. I mean, we're bow hunters, right? We're there to help one another, to succeed and to be pleasant with one another. So if you're listening to this and you're never done an event, and you don't have any buddies to come with, don't worry about it. Uh, yeah, just don't worry about it. So easy for me to say though, right?
It's well worth your time and the money vested to travel to Wisconsin for a beast mode event. And I would strongly encourage anybody that has a desire to go backcountry or is currently going backcountry to go do the 8 hour challenge, because you're going to learn a lot and you're going to have a blast doing it. Yeah.
I would agree. And I would love to turn this into a 24-hour event. Um,
You do
there's
that, you're taking my money.
there's so many logistics though that so this is what I love about our volunteers and the team that we have. We make these events, I think, look easy to put on. When it's just an organized chaos behind the scenes and just trying to get everything working together, and to go from 8 hours to even 12 hours, but then let alone 24 hours. I mean, we would need an army of volunteers and an army of team to put that on. And then the ideas that I have for surprises and for challenges, like your story of forgetting your food, creating, simulating those things at the event. There's this fine line of this event being fun and educational and challenging, and there's a fine line between that and just royally pissing people off and discouraging people. I don't want to discourage people, right? But I'm always teeter-tottering on that fine line of, and some people, you know what? If you've done one of the events and you didn't come back because you thought this or that or that, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it to be that way. But at the same hand, I want it to be on that line, because if not, then it's not truly challenging the majority of the people. So
I think a cool twist to the 24-hour event would be you show up with your pack load. You do the first 2 or 3 laps under pack load, then you go pitch a site somewhere, and
yeah,
then you spend the rest of the day getting as many laps as you can with your regular 25-pound load, because that's your gear load. I mean, your food, foul weather gear, a med kit, your fluids, your kill kit, like all of that stuff. It's usually around a 25-pound load. You run that all day long, and then there's a cutoff time to where you go back to camp. Camp wouldn't require a ton of volunteers, maybe like yourself and a safety observer or something. But then in the morning, there's a wake up call. And at first light, you're breaking camp down. You're putting your whole camp back on your back. And then you run the course for another 2-3 hours tops, and you finish under pack load. That way, if you did that, you wouldn't require all those volunteers for the
right.
entire time.
Yeah,
And that really give people an idea of, holy cow, I've got to take my kit. I don't get the luxury of food in a cooler. Like you don't get to bring a cooler this year and you're living out of your cooler of food. The food that you bring, it's in your pack. You're living off of the food that you're going to have on the mountain, because realistically, Brian, we have to formulate our nutrition plan off of what we're carrying.
yep.
I think it'd be a great twist. How
No,
you have to execute that's up to your brilliant mind.
yeah.
That's just my idea.
That's it is something I've been seriously considering, is having people arrive the day before or the night before and having the camp there and doing something like what you're talking about is we have to hike to a certain. The reason, really, the number one reason why I haven't done that is because there's a good chunk of the people that are doing this event that are doing it to see if they're ready for a backcountry hunt, and they don't have all that gear.
Okay.
So I don't want the gear. I don't want that to be something that they have to go out and buy. Instead of a 10-person car camping tent that they have to now go spend $600 on a backcountry tent.
Have two categories.
I know that's
You could do it on the same day. You could do an 8 hour and 24 hour category. So the 8 hour crew, they come and just do the standard 8 hour. And then
mhm.
pay for the 20. If you pay the 24 hour fee, then you fall into those guidelines of this is how you're going to execute it. It could be the same start time,
Yeah.
right? Just, at 8 hours, when the 8 hour crew finishes, you could still have like that might be your cutoff time, Brian, is at 8 hours, you're no longer running laps on the course. We're transitioning into, we're going to go sit and listen for night bugles, and we're going to go sit in camp, right? So everybody's down there for watching the 8 hour folks finish and celebrate them. And then we go to camp, and then we get up in the morning and we run 2 or 3 more laps.
Do you are you aware of the death race?
No.
So it's put on by Spartan. It's the creator of the Spartan race. It's the death race. And it's an event that I was looking at participating in, but then I started this beast mode stuff, and that's consumed all my time, and I don't have time to do that. But so the death race is typically they've changed a little bit now, and they've expanded. They're in several countries now, but it started out as a very small event. I mean, we're talking about maybe 15 competitors, and you signed up for it, and you kind of knew when the start time was, or you had to be there at a certain date, right? But you have no idea when it's going to start. You have no idea how long it is. You have no idea where the finish line is going to be. And there's again a lot. The death race has given me a lot of ideas for the different events and challenges and surprises, because you typically have different challenges throughout. It could be a 2 day event. It could be a week long event. You have no idea how long it's going to take you. So, I mean, there are this crazy, crazy challenges you have to do. Like, I'm just going to throw some out there. Is the one is that you start with carrying a mountain bike frame, right? And so you're hiking along, you're carrying this frame, and every challenge you complete, you get a component of the bike to put together to eventually be able to ride the bike, right? So there's one challenge was I forget what it was. It was like a Ziploc bag full of 1,000 pennies or something like that, and they threw it into this pond. This basically looked like a big wallow, and you had to jump in, dive down, and look for these pennies. And if you got so many pennies, then you could cash that in for a part of the bike, right? So there's just all of these crazy, crazy things. There's one challenge where if you didn't do it right, you had to climb up this hill several hundred. I mean, it's a steep, steep hill. It's like the side of a mountain, and there's this uh, uh, figure. What the heck are the little figure things that the kids put together that we used to put together as a kid? What are the toys? The little
The Legos.
Legos. Yeah, man. So this figure put together of Legos is like a house, right? And it wasn't really, really big, but you had to memorize how that was put together. So then you walk back down the bottom of the mountain and you had to put it together, right? If you got it wrong, well, you have to hike back. So you had to keep doing this. But at some point, if you didn't get it right, right, there was a bucket of rotten, I think it was like cow innards or something. Like it was like rotten. You had to stick your head, not physically stick your head in, but you had to smell it. You had to smell it. And then you had to do like a log roll for like 300 yards.
Oh,
While every so far you'd have to smell this. So people were like crazy, crazy stuff. Like there's some crazy things I'd love to do for the endurance event. But again, there's that fine line of of people actually wanting to participate and challenge themselves, and then also making it, uh, be able to correlate. Okay, these challenges are actually something that you're going to encounter on an elk hunt or on a backcountry hunt or whatever it might be. But I think there is some legitimacy to having some challenges where, let's say, your pack breaks or whatever, or you have to just these are just ideas coming out of the top of my mind. Let's say a strap breaks on your pack. So now you got to, for this next lap, you have to carry your pack only on one shoulder, right? Or, just things like that that you might encounter. Uh, Something breaks on your pack, or something happens with your boot, or hey, you forgot your food. And really, the reason we don't have water stations, if you notice, we didn't have any even this year with it being hot, we had no water stations
Good for you.
because you have to prepare. This is on you. Like you can come back to your truck on every lap, like, but if you didn't bring water, well, you're SOL. Like obviously, there's water at Tyrol at the building, but we're not going to have water stations for you. We're not going to provide. This is not like your 5K fun run type thing. This is a legitimate event that's going to help you prepare. And if you forget something or whatever it is, that's on you. You have to figure it out, or hopefully find you a friendly competitor that will help you with something.
Love it.
No, we could talk long and long on this stuff, but
We can. And we're about at the hour mark, Brian. So I mean, I would love to. There's so many topics that you and I could sit and have a jam session on. So I think we might have to do this again. So before I offer you the opportunity to share with listeners where to find all of your information, I do want to offer you the opportunity. If you want to do an annual session, and it might be a 20-minute podcast, if you want to showcase your challenges for the year, and we can talk about specifics for your challenges, I'm all about it. If we want to get together and do it quarterly, or if you're like, hey, we've got 5 events coming up this summer, then let's do a podcast, and you can put some information out about them, and we'll get it out on the airways. So that option is open for you to take advantage of. But why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on social media and the internet, so they can find out information about what you do and what's coming up this calendar year?
you bet. Well, Aaron, first of all, thanks for that invite. And I think that's a great idea for us to do a podcast if you're open for it. To do it especially with events coming up. We still have 2 more events coming up, the King of the Hill 3D and the BMAC games, which if you are a competitor of the endurance event, the BMAC games is going to be right up that alley. It's a 4-stage event. And anyways, we can get more into that at a different podcast, but yes, I think having some information, because I know that there's a lot of folks that do our events that have asked for me to do a podcast, and I am not a podcaster. You are the podcaster. So maybe coming up here shortly, we do another one just specifically on that event that's coming up, and we can talk about some of the details and new things that we'll be doing. But yeah, so people can find us at Beast Mode Archery on Instagram and Facebook. Just search Beast Mode Archery. I try to post somewhat regularly on there. I personally don't like social media all that much. So I go in bouts where it's just me, well, it's me, my wife, and key volunteers, but on social, I'm the one that does it. I don't have a firm that does it, or I'm not paying somebody to do social for me. So I do it when I can, and I do it when I feel like it. But if you want like up-to-date information, that's a good place to find it, because typically that's the first place I post when it comes to something new about the events or whatever. Beastmodearcherychallenge.com is our website. All of our events are on there, all the details on the events. The registration for every event can be found on the appropriate page on the website. If you have specific questions, you can either DM me through social, or preferably just email me, because you know how social is. If you don't actually follow the person, that goes into some hidden folder and you don't see it until you actually check it, type thing. So if you have a specific question or whatnot, you can reach out to me on email, beastmodearchery@gmail.com. My phone number, it's my cell number. It's the one that's on the websites and everything. So feel free to call or text with questions as well. I have a lot of folks that text me with questions. You can find it on the website and on social as well. So that's where you can find that. My other, which we didn't really get into, my fitness training, my personal training, all that kind of stuff. You can find that mostly just on Instagram, and that's GFB Outdoors. Basically stands for Get Fit with Brian Outdoors. So GFB as in boy, as in Brian. Outdoors is my Instagram page. And I have a website and stuff like that, but I don't really, man, it's been a while since I've updated that. So, but the GFB Outdoors is kind of my fitness stuff and just personal stuff like camping, hunts, stuff like that. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. With that, we're gonna shut this podcast down. I am positive we're gonna do this again. And 100%,
Awesome.
I'd love to help you promote your events. So, thanks for spending the last 60 minutes with us. And Brian, be limitless, man.
You got it, man. Thank you.